On a farm in New Zealand, Henry and his best friend Tucker are having fun rounding up a flock of sheep. Henry's brother Angus can't join them because he walks with a limp, so he's constantly jealous of his sibling for being their father's pride. One day, Angus kills Henry's pet sheep with an axe. When Henry comes home, he hears a strange sound and follows it to the barn. It's pretty dark in there, but he still finds blood dripping from the ceiling. Suddenly, his pet sheep's carcass falls in front of him and keeps roaring as Henry steps away in fear. The moment is interrupted by housekeeper Mrs. Mac, who calls Angus out for dressing up to scare his brother. Then she informs them that their father has died in an accident. 15 years later, Henry returns to the farm, and his taxi is quickly surrounded by sheep. His brother's prank left him deeply traumatized, and now Henry has a terrible fear of sheep. So he's on the verge of a panic attack. He tries to call his therapist, but she can't take his call. Thankfully, the sheep walk away, and the car can advance. Meanwhile, animal activists Grant and Experience jump over a fence to sneak into the farm. Suddenly, a biplane flies too close to the ground, and the duo has to duck. Grant knows this belongs to Angus and curses his name. When Henry makes it to the house, he asks the taxi to wait, even though the trip is already costing too much. Inside, he finds creepy sheep heads on the walls and a cute picture from his childhood. At that moment, Mrs. Mac points a gun at the back of his neck, thinking he's an intruder. However, she recognizes him when he turns around and hugs him. Afterward, Henry goes looking for Angus and finds him rehearsing for the presentation of his new sheep breed, the Oldfield, named after the family. Angus meets Henry rather coldly and wonders why he's here. So, Henry explains that his therapist told him to come to confront his issues. After Angus mocks him for still being afraid of sheep, he takes him back to the house and gives him a check for $2 million to buy his part of the farm. Back to the activists. They find the farm's lab and notice that one of the scientists is Astrid, a woman with a very bad reputation. While Experience takes pictures of the workers loading a mysterious crate into a truck, Grant runs to a cooler to steal one of its containers. He doesn't see the label that says it's dangerous waste. On his way back, the workers see him and start chasing him. The activists run together and hide in the forest, where Experience scolds Grant for showing his face. However, Grant thinks stopping genetic engineering is more important. When they look at the container, they see a creepy creature inside and Experience realizes it's highly toxic genetic material. Then the workers enter the forest too. So, Grant starts running again. Unfortunately, he trips and drops the container, which instantly breaks. While the pursuers take the wrong turn, the creature from the container climbs on Grant's back and bites his ear. Grant tries to pull it off, but the beast won't let go and stretches his skin. Grant smashes it against the tree to no avail. He also tries hitting it with a stick, but he accidentally hits his head instead. Then he pulls again and finally gets it off, throwing it on the ground in horror. Grant yells in pain before collapsing, and the creature crawls away until it finds the flock. When a sheep comes closer, the little beast bites it. Soon Experience comes out of the forest and sees fallen trees everywhere. Back in the house, Mrs. Mac gives Henry his father's golden shears, but Henry doesn't think he deserves them. He's ready to go home. However, Mrs. Mac tells him to tour the farm to confront his fears. Tucker goes with him since he's the farm manager now. Henry and Tucker drive up the hill, but stop the truck when a sheep with a bleeding nose blocks the road. Tucker checks on the animal's wound while Henry tries calling his therapist, but he has no signal. Since the guys are distracted, Experience sneaks to the back of the truck to steal a rifle. Then she points it at them and forces them to help her find her friend. In the woods, Grant catches a rabbit and eats its raw flesh. When he hears Experience calling his name, he quickly hides. Experience is losing her patience, but Tucker can't take her seriously because the rifle still has the safety on. He pretends to show her how to fix it and easily takes the weapon from her. Meanwhile, a farm worker hears a noise outside his kitchen. He goes out to investigate only to scream when something attacks him. Minutes later, Experience and the guys see smoke coming from the employee's house and rush to check it out. They find a burning pot on the stove and blood all over the kitchen. They search for the missing worker, and Henry is startled by a sheep skull on the wall. Suddenly, the wounded sheep appears in the corridor and growls at them before chasing them. So Henry drags everyone into the next room and locks the door. The sheep begins pounding on the door with its head, so Tucker pushes some furniture to block it. Experience blames this on Angus' experiments, which Henry didn't know about. Then she screams when she sees the worker's body behind the bed. Eventually, the sheep manages to make a hole in the door, and Tucker shoots it in the head, making it fall back. However, the sheep immediately returns, and Tucker has to shoot it again to kill it for good. When the trio leaves the house, they find a bunch of sheep outside the door. Tucker goes ahead to start the truck while Experience uses meditation techniques to keep Henry calm as they walk among the sheep. Suddenly, Tucker finds a sheep sticking its head through the door and tries reaching for the rifle, but the beast almost bites him. Experience and Henry finally get on the truck, and Tucker immediately takes off. But the sheep is still on the passenger seat and keeps trying to bite him, since Tucker is punching it to push it back. He can't exactly drive well. Henry finds a chainsaw in the back of the truck, but when he turns it on, he can't control it, and it ends up falling off. Tucker then smacks the sheep's head several times against the steering wheel, so the sheep leans down and bites his foot instead. A frustrated Tucker kicks it a few times before grabbing the rifle and moving to join the others on the back. Swearing he's fine because his boot protected his foot, the sheep is now at the wheel and driving them toward a cliff. So the trio jumps off right before the truck falls and crashes onto the beach. Experience says the view is beautiful, but Henry explains that this is where his father died. Another sheep appears nearby. However, it seems normal, so Tucker just scares it off. Henry wants to call for help, only to realize he left his phone in the truck. They have no choice but to walk all the way back. Meanwhile, a scientist gets rid of toxic waste by throwing it into the awful pit. On his way back, he finds two sheep staring at him, so he barks at them to mock them. Suddenly, one sheep bites him in the rear and another tackles him. Angus is organizing his event and notices a car outside his house. The cab driver has fallen asleep, and the taxi meter has reached $1,000. Realizing Henry is still around, Angus gets into his car to look for him. Near the hills, he finds Grant blocking the road. Grant's face is deformed, but it doesn't stop him from yelling at Angus for what he does to the animals. An argument follows, and Angus points a finger at Grant as he tries to kick him out, so Grant bites his hand before running away. Moments later, Tucker feels some pain and realizes that the sheep did manage to bite his foot. He takes off his boot and is horrified to discover that his foot has transformed into a hoof. At that moment, the flock finds them and starts chasing them. So the trio has no choice but to hide in the lab while wandering from room to room. The group is shocked to find a sheep hanging from the ceiling with its stomach open. Its heart is still beating, and when they get too close, it snaps at them. Tucker wants to shoot it, but they're interrupted by Angus and Astrid, who call this agricultural science. Astrid suddenly injects a sedative into Tucker's neck, and as he collapses, Angus takes his weapon. When he threatens to shoot, Henry and Experience run away. As soon as they leave the lab, the sheep start chasing them again. The duo runs as fast as possible and ends up near the pit, where they find what's left of the scientist's body. They cross the pit's fence and lock it to stop the sheep from following them, only for Angus to show up too. Surprisingly, the flock doesn't attack him. Henry is disgusted by his brother's plan, so he throws away the check, saying their deal is over. The sheep keep trying to reach through the fence, and Henry is so scared that he accidentally slips into the pit. Experience catches his arm, and they ask Angus for help. However, he steps away and says that accidents happen. Since Experience can't hold Henry's weight anymore, they end up falling into the pit and landing on all the guts from failed experiments. Experience hates the smell, so she lights up an aromatherapy candle. Henry takes it from her to use it as a light to find the exit. At the lab, Angus wonders why the workers he called to move his special sheep haven't shown up yet. On the hills, the sheep are eating those workers. Angus' bite wound is getting pretty nasty, so he lets Astrid take a sample for research. In the pit, the duo finds a tunnel and starts crossing it. Henry tells Experience about his family issues and how he wants closure, but Experience points out that these are his roots. Suddenly, they hear a sheep bleeding, which startles Henry and causes him to put out the candle flame. Experience quickly lights it, and they run together while hearing the sheep bleed again, but they discover that the tunnel is blocked. Then Henry takes a closer look with the candle and finds a smaller tunnel at the bottom. Hearing the sheep getting closer, the duo has no choice but to crawl through the small hole. Experience is too scared and can't keep going, so Henry repeats her meditation techniques to calm her down. At that moment, a sheep tries to bite Henry's foot, so he starts kicking it to keep it at bay while Experience keeps moving. When she tries to go through a smaller hole, she gets stuck, so Henry gives her a push to help her. Then he crawls through the hole too, and soon the sheep puts its head through it, but its body won't fit. Henry throws the candle at it, setting it on fire to kill it. In the meantime, Mrs. Mack asks about Henry, so Angus tells her that he left without saying goodbye, which Mrs. Mack finds strange. In his room, Angus bandages his wound and practices his speech in the mirror, but he panics when he finds himself bleeding between words. Eventually, Henry and Experience manage to leave the pit and make it to the barn, where they wash all the blood off. They hear a weird noise and go inside to investigate, only to discover that Grant has transformed into a giant sheep. The sound they heard was him trying to shear himself. Grant hits Henry with such strength that it sends him flying. While Experience tries to reason with her friend, Henry finds the shears and tries to stab Grant in the neck, but the beast easily disarms him and hits him again. The duo starts running as soon as they can, and Grant immediately chases them. They run for a while until Henry and Experience manage to close a gate behind them. However, when they try to leave, they discover they're trapped too. Then Grant opens the gate and comes closer. So Experience notices the blood in his mouth. She starts scolding him for eating meat, keeping him distracted until Henry manages to open the door. The duo comes out and closes the door behind them again, keeping Grant at bay for now. In the lab, Astrid studies Tucker's foot and thinks she should inject him with the fluid from an artificial sheep womb. However, she makes her assistant wait when Tucker starts convulsing. His head transforms into a deformed sheep, so Astrid gives him the injection, causing another convulsion that gives him back his human body. When Astrid leaves the lab, she discovers that the sheep are eating her now deceased assistant. The flock sees her too and quickly surrounds her, so Astrid runs into the woods. While hearing the bleeding behind her, she gets distracted and accidentally gets her feet stuck in the mud. The sheep use the chance to finally devour her. Meanwhile, Angus welcomes all the potential investors to his event and drinks lots of water during the speech to stop himself from bleeding, but the crowd is distracted by all the noises coming from the crate. Angus decides to open the crate early and shows everyone his beautiful Oldfield sheep. As the crowd claps, the sheep starts bleeding rather loudly, which is heard by Mrs. Mack at the river. As Henry and Experience arrive at the event, they're terrified to watch the entire flock crash the place as well. They've been summoned by the Oldfield sheep's bleeding, and now they're happily feeding on all the guests who can't escape because there are too many of them. As panic and blood fill the area, Angus stares a sheep in the eye, but the animal walks away. When Angus looks down, he discovers that his hand has become a hoof. At that moment, Mrs. Mack shows up in her car to rescue Henry and Experience. As they drive away, they accidentally hit a sheep with the car, and Experience feels bad for celebrating. At the same time, Angus takes the Oldfield sheep to his office and locks the door before comforting his pet. Soon, Henry and the others also enter the house and try to use the phone, but the lines are down. Suddenly, Grant comes out of the shadows and hits Henry, who finds some haggis on the stove and throws it onto the ground. Grant immediately starts eating it, and Henry rushes to get a shotgun. But there are no bullets. Since Grant is done eating, Henry throws a spicy sausage at him to distract him again, allowing Mrs. Mack to pass him the bullets. Before he can shoot, Grant tackles him into the furniture. Mrs. Mack retrieves the gun, but Experience asks her not to shoot her friend. Instead, she grabs a needle and uses an acupuncture technique to put Grant to sleep. In the evening, it starts raining, so the sheep surround the house looking for shelter. The trio moves furniture to block all the entrances and notices that the study is locked. A suspicious Henry rushes upstairs and finds Angus in his underwear. It turns out he's been getting intimate with the Oldfield sheep. Henry thinks this is disgusting and gets ready to shoot the sheep, but Angus stops him and reveals he genetically engineered the sheep using his and his brother's DNA. As they hear the sheep trying to break in, Henry considers shooting his brother, but Angus gives him the weapon and says a final goodbye before leaving. On his way upstairs, he sees the sheep pushing their heads through broken windows, so he grabs the golden shears from a table. The trio reaches the balcony and discovers that the survivors from the event have transformed into sheep too. They also notice Angus leaving and realize that he'll escape on his biplane. When Henry raises his arm, Mrs. Mack notices a wound, meaning Grant bit him during the fight. Afterward, Henry guides the women to the car and tells them to leave without him. After Experience kisses him, he takes the sheepskin that decorates the car seats. By pretending to be a sheep, he crosses the field with the flock and sees some sheep mating. Suddenly, one of them gets behind him and tries to mount him too, so Henry hits it in the groin. The sheep moves away and causes him to lose the sheepskin in the process, but nobody attacks him because he's infected. When the women finally drive off, Mrs. Mack drives like a maniac while Experience shoots any sheep that dares to come too close. Meanwhile, Angus starts his biplane and goes to get his special sheep from the barn. However, he drops it when his body painfully begins to convulse as it transforms. At that moment, Henry enters the barn and Angus jumps on him. Henry dodges his punch and starts running, so a new chase begins. Angus manages to catch him and starts smashing his head against a wall while Henry points out they could have run the farm together if Angus hadn't ruined everything. Suddenly, Henry stabs his brother in the neck with the golden shears, but this only causes him to transform into something even more terrifying. Henry rushes to grab the gun, only for Angus to easily knock it away and roar at him. When Henry runs out of the barn, he sees the biplane moving across the field. Angus comes after him, but is interrupted by the farm's sheepdog barking at him. Since Angus is a sheep now, he can't stop his body from submitting to the dog's instincts. Suddenly, the plane hits Angus from behind and slices several pieces of flesh off his body, yet he's still alive. Angus tries to attack again. However, Tucker shows up in his human form and injects Angus with Astrid serum, causing him to collapse and transform back into a human. Then, Tucker makes Henry drink the serum too, in order to stop the infection. Afterward, the group uses the sheepdog to round up all the sheep and transformed people into the barn, but they realize they don't have enough serum for everyone. Suddenly, Angus shows up and lets the sheep feast on him as a final goodbye. The animals devour him within minutes, and soon they all start farting, since those farts are full of flammable methane. Henry throws a lighter at them, causing a massive explosion that blows them all up. Sometime later, Henry is working on the farm. As the terrifying Experience has finally cured his fear of sheep, the group helps him cure Grant, who now feels guilty because he remembers eating a rabbit. Mrs. Mack shares a snack called mountain oysters, and Experience happily takes a bite, only to spit it out when Henry tells her they're actually sheep's testicles. On the hills, the sheepdog watches over the farm, and suddenly lets out a sheep-like bleat. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.